A narrow mountain trail cut through the dense green forest. A massive black wild boar charged straight toward Eleanor, Ellie Johnson, 74. The old woman fell to the ground, certain of her death. At that instant, a yellow shadow darted out like lightning. It was a stray Alaskan Malamute. The dog saved the old woman's life. But the story did not end there. Every night, the Malamute dug repeatedly at the spot where the large pickling Crocks stood. Eventually, a hidden tape recorder and secret documents emerged from the earth. All they needed was a mental competency certificate. But what Eleanor heard from the tape recorder was the voice of her son's wife. How did this dog know everything? In the old hamlet high in the Colorado mountains, it was as if time had stopped. Old houses huddled together along unpaved dirt lanes. At the end of the lane was a small ranch house. Instead of a classic shingle roof, it had a corrugated tin roof. That was Eleanor Johnson's home. In the yard, several large ceramic crocks for pickles and preserved foods were lined up. A fruitful apple tree stretched its branches heavily over the fence. On the wall hung an old, faded calendar distributed by the local feed store years ago. The page for July had been neatly torn off. At 5:30 a.m., Eleanor woke up. At 74, she was accustomed to short periods of sleep. She got up and headed to the kitchen. Lighting the old gas stove, she took out leftover bacon and some eggs to prepare breakfast. She turned on the radio, and the local news station's morning program began to play. Stirring her oatmeal, she listened to the broadcast. The sour aroma of coffee and toast filled the air. "When you get old, you're the only one left to cook for yourself," she muttered to herself. It had been 1 year since her husband, George, passed away. At first, sitting alone at the table felt terribly awkward. In the morning, she still felt she could hear George's cough in the yard or his voice yelling to turn up the radio. Now, however, she had grown used to it. No, she had to get used to it. Eleanor set the table for one, a bowl of oatmeal, a slice of toast, and a cup of coffee. It was a simple breakfast. While eating, she gazed out the window. She could see the Crocks in the yard. It felt as though the years she had lived with her husband were contained in those Crocks. "I have to protect this house and these Crocks until the very end. This is everything from the years I lived with him," she whispered. Recently, however, the atmosphere in the house felt unsettled. A few days earlier, her son, Dave, and his wife, Tiffany, had visited. Dave, who had been running a real estate venture in Denver, said he had failed. It had become difficult to see him lately. That day, Dave and Tiffany sat in the living room and spoke indirectly. "Mom, we hear this area is going to be redeveloped soon. The ones who prepare early win." Tiffany's voice was soft, but carried a calculating ring. Eleanor answered vaguely, "Is that so? I'm not really good with that kind of talk." Dave cut in, "Mom, we can help, like organizing the paperwork, you know." Eleanor nodded, but felt an unease deep inside. Why were they suddenly bringing up the house? Those words kept swirling in her head. After breakfast, Eleanor went out to the yard, circled the Crocks, and swept under the apple tree. The summer sun was fierce, and the cicadas were noisy. She suddenly remembered the days when her husband, George, was alive. In the summer, he often walked the forest trails. There, he had a yellow Alaskan Malamute he called his friend. The dog was special to George, having some connection to his younger days, and he cherished him above all else. "Are you going to see that boy again?" she would ask. George would laugh and reply, "Yes, I have to go. He only waits for me." George often took dog food in a lunchbox for the dog. At first, she couldn't understand. Why was he so devoted to taking care of a single stray dog? But George insisted, "He's not just a dog. He can look at a person's face and read their heart." Thinking back, she sighed. She hadn't seen the dog George loved even once since he passed away. Where had he gone? Was he still alive? In the afternoon, Eleanor rested inside. She turned on the TV, but nothing registered. Her mind was filled with Dave's and Tiffany's words. What did they mean by organizing the house? She was worried. Was something happening without her knowledge? She shook her head, trying to believe her son wouldn't do such a thing. In the evening, she went to the kitchen again to prepare dinner. Even eating alone, She had to prepare properly. She cooked rice, reheated some soup, and took out fresh vegetables. While eating, she gazed out the window. The sun was setting. The apple tree in the yard cast a long shadow in the twilight. She suddenly felt lonely. "Oh, George, I wish you were here," she whispered. If her husband were by her side, she wouldn't feel so isolated. They would eat together, watch TV together, and go to sleep together. Night fell, and Eleanor went to bed but couldn't fall asleep easily. Dave's and Tiffany's words echoed in her head. "Am I being too paranoid?" she thought, but the anxious feeling wouldn't disappear. She stared at the ceiling and closed her eyes. Near dawn, she finally drifted off. Her husband, George, appeared in her dream and said, "Ellie, protect the house well. Guard it until the end under your name." In the dream, she replied, "I know, don't worry." But when she woke up, the feeling of anxiety returned. Why did George appear in her dream and urge her to protect the house? What did it mean? She got out of bed and opened the window. The cool, crisp air flowed in. She looked down at the yard. The Crocks loomed vaguely in the darkness. "George, is something bad going to happen?" she murmured. But there was no answer. Only the sound of the wind rustling the leaves could be heard. A few days later, Eleanor decided to go into the forest to gather wild mushrooms. It was a spot she often visited with her husband in the summer. Basket in hand, she left the house. The trail was about a 10-minute walk from home. She walked slowly. Her knees ached a little, but she could bear it. As she entered the forest, a cool, refreshing space spread out. The sound of the cicadas grew louder. She began to pick mushrooms. There were many of the kind George loved. She carefully picked each one, put it in her basket, and inhaled its scent. Just then, a strange sound came from deep within the forest. Thump thump, heavy footsteps. She looked up. Something was approaching. Her heart pounded. A tree branch shook, and immediately afterward, a massive black shadow appeared. It was a wild boar. The black boar, as large as a bear, lowered its head and stared at her. She gasped. Its eyes glowed, filled with savage fury. "Oh, no," she thought. She backed away but tripped over her feet and fell. The basket fell from her hand, and the mushrooms scattered around. The boar began to charge. The ground shook. She tightly closed her eyes. "Is this how I die?" she wondered. But at that instant, a yellow shadow sprang out like lightning from nowhere. It was a dog. The yellow Alaskan Malamute charged straight at the boar, slamming into its body. The boar stumbled. The dog bared its fangs and barked furiously. Woof, woof. The boar backed away, looking terrified. But the dog did not stop and continued its attack. The boar and the dog clashed violently. Dirt and leaves flew into the air. Eleanor stared at the scene in a daze. The Malamute was protecting her. After several collisions, the boar finally gave up and fled deeper into the forest. The dog, breathing heavily, turned back to her. Glossy yellow fur, black, clear eyes, and a curled tail. She realized. Aren't you the dog my George talked about?" she asked in a trembling voice. The dog came closer and sat quietly beside her. She put her arms around its neck. "Thank you. If you hadn't been here, I would have died today." Tears overflowed. The dog quietly gazed at her face, its eyes seeming to understand everything. Eleanor took the dog home. The dog followed her obediently. Once home, she brought food from the kitchen, mixed it with broth, and put it in a bowl. "Here, eat." She placed the bowl in front of the dog. The dog approached cautiously and began to eat. He must have been very hungry. He finished it in no time. She gave him water. After drinking, the dog gently wagged its tail. "What is your name?" she asked, and suddenly realized. "Ah, yes, George called you Bear, didn't he?" She decided to call him by that name. Bear looked up at her and whined softly, as if agreeing. That afternoon, she took Bear to a small, unmarked animal clinic in the village. A cheerful vet in his late 60s greeted her. "Well, Ellie, long time no see. Where did this dog come from?" "He saved me from a wild boar. I wanted to have him checked in case he was injured." The vet examined Bear and found a small cut on his leg. He applied antiseptic and gave him a simple bandage. "It's nothing serious. It'll heal in a few days." Thank you. She paid the fee and took Bear home. Bear walked close to her. His leg seemed to hurt a little, but he followed devotedly. That night, she fed Bear again. Bear ate with enthusiasm. Watching him, she smiled. It had been a long time since the house felt so lively. The house isn't lonely when you're here, Bear. She spoke to him. Bear sat quietly beside her, and she stroked his head. She felt the warm, soft fur. Late at night, she prepared a bed for Bear in a corner of the yard, spreading out an old blanket and placing a bowl of water. Sleep here, have a good rest. With that, she went into her room. But in the middle of the night, she heard a strange noise. Scratch, scratch. She woke up. What was that sound? She opened the door and looked out. Bear was pacing around the ceramic crocks, pressing his nose to the ground, sniffing, and scratching the dirt with his paws. Bear, what are you doing? When she approached, Bear looked at her once and started digging the dirt again. It was as if he was searching for something. Is there something there? She looked at the spot Bear was digging, but saw nothing, just the ground. Stop digging now. Go to sleep. She gently scolded Bear. Bear stopped for a moment, then went towards the kitchen and started scratching the floorboards. Hey, why are you so restless? Isn't this your home? She took Bear out to the yard again, but Bear remained uneasy, repeatedly going to the small room's doorway and then back to the crocks to dig the dirt. She couldn't understand. Why was Bear acting like this? Was he searching for something? Or was he just not used to the new environment? Suddenly, an old memory came back to her, the story of George and Bear's first meeting. It was several years ago. On a snowy winter day, George had gone for a walk early in the morning and returned late in the evening carrying something. George, what is that? She asked. Her husband carefully opened the front of his jacket. Inside was a trembling yellow Malamute puppy, almost frozen. I found him in the woods. He would have frozen to death. George put the puppy down in the yard and gave him warm milk and food. The puppy ate ravenously. She asked anxiously, are we keeping him? No, I'll let him live in the woods. His mother might come back for him, but I will bring him food. From that day on, George continued to bring food to the puppy in the woods at a fixed time every day. Like clockwork, the puppy always waited for him and happily wagged his tail. She still couldn't understand why he was so devoted. George had laughed and answered, he's not just a dog. He can look at a person's face and read their heart. Several months later, the puppy grew into a handsome adult dog. One day, George slipped on an icy road, injured his leg, and couldn't move. Bear appeared. Bear found him, barked madly, ran to the settlement, and brought people. Thanks to that, George was saved. After that incident, her husband said, he is my guardian. When I'm sad, he just sits quietly beside me. He is better than any human. Remembering that, she looked at Bear. Is this the same dog from that time? There was no mistake. The glossy yellow fur, the black, clear eyes, and the gaze that looked at George that day. Yes, he is the dog George spoke about, she whispered. Bear whined, his eyes seeming to hold a message. Then why did you show up only now? It's been a year since George died. She wondered, but Bear couldn't answer. Bear went back to the crocks and started digging the dirt again. The next afternoon, Dave and Tiffany came over. She was happy to see her son. But when they saw Bear, both their faces stiffened. Mom, where did you get this dog? Dave asked. He saved me from a wild boar, so I decided to keep him. Tiffany cut in with a sharp voice. Mom, where did you get a dog like that? Do you know how much a lawsuit costs these days if a country dog bites someone? He would never bite anyone. He's a very gentle dog, she said, stroking Bear. But Tiffany's displeased expression did not change. Dave added, Mom, it's hard enough to manage this house. If you keep a dog, the cleanup will be a hassle later. Cleanup? What cleanup? She looked at her son. Dave avoided her gaze. Oh, just in case we have to organize the house later. Her heart grew heavy. The house talk again. Why did they keep repeating the phrase, organize the house? This dog is my life's savior. He's family now, she said firmly. Dave and Tiffany exchanged a look. An awkward silence ensued. Bear watched them and let out a low growl. When Dave tried to approach, Bear bared his fangs. Mom, this dog is too aggressive. It would be terrible if he bit someone, Tiffany said. She stroked Bear. It's okay, Bear, it's my son. But Bear continued to growl. Wary of the two, she felt strange. Why did Bear dislike Dave and Tiffany so much? The two didn't stay long and left quickly. Watching her children leave, her heart was heavy. She had a feeling that something was wrong. That night, Bear started digging around the ceramic crock again. She watched him. Bear, what's in there? Did George hide something? Perhaps? Curiosity arose. But it was late, and she couldn't dig further. She scolded Bear and went into her room. She lay in bed and pondered. Why did Bear appear? Was it a coincidence? Or was there a reason? Did George send him? George, did you send him? She whispered toward the ceiling. There was no answer, but she felt that Bear's appearance was not accidental. The conflict had begun. Dave and Tiffany disliked Bear, and Bear was wary of them. Eleanor was caught in the middle. Filled with anxiety, something was going in the wrong direction. Several days passed, and Bear continued to dig around the crock every night without fail. No matter how much she tried to stop him, he didn't listen, digging at the same spot as if possessed. Bear, please stop, you'll knock over the crock, she begged, but Bear didn't stop. He scraped the dirt with his front paws, pressing his nose to the ground, sniffing as if something was beneath. One afternoon, she decided to check the spot where Bear was digging herself. She took out a trowel and started to dig the soil. Bear stood beside her, wagging his tail, watching. I told you not to dig. What is this? The trowel hit something. It was a plastic bag. An old plastic bag buried in the dirt revealed itself. She carefully pulled out the bag. It was wrapped in multiple layers of plastic. Inside, there was a thick envelope of documents. Her heart thumped. What is this? She opened the envelope, which contained several papers. The first was a copy of a bank statement. It was in her name, with a balance noted, but she didn't remember having such an account. My account. I don't remember opening one. She tilted her head. The second was a copy of the land deed, which included the house and part of the field. All in her name. The deed to our house. Why was it buried here? She couldn't understand. The third was a small, handwritten journal by her husband. She began to read, in case of emergency. This is for Ellie only. Absolutely must not be given to David. This house and land belong to Ellie. Her hands trembled. Why did her husband leave such a note? What did he mean by, in case of emergency? George, why did you hide something like this here? Her heart grew heavy, and a sense of foreboding washed over her. Did George know something? Did he know that Dave was targeting the house and land? Bear sat quietly beside her, his face looking satisfied, as if his duty was done. Bear, did you want me to know this? When she stroked him, Bear wagged his tail. She returned the documents to the envelope and took them inside, hiding them in the very back of her deepest drawer. That night, Dave came alone. His face was full of worry. Mom, have you had dinner yet? Yes, I have. You haven't yet? Can I eat something you made? She went to the kitchen and prepared a meal for her son. Dave ate in silence, watching him. Her heart ached. He seemed to be in serious trouble. He had mentioned he had huge debts from his business failure. She wanted to help him, but didn't know how. When he finished eating, Dave went out to the yard and started making a phone call. As she was washing dishes, she accidentally overheard his conversation. Dave was speaking in a low voice in the corner of the yard. But the window was open, and she could hear clearly. Yes, Mr. Carter, if I put up my mother's house as collateral, the loan will be approved with my credit, right? Yes, once I get her signature. Mom is naive about these things. How much will the loan be? Around $50 should be enough. Yes, understood. I'll come with the papers tomorrow. She stopped washing dishes and gasped. What was Dave saying? Borrowing money with the house as collateral. Getting her signature. The call ended. She quickly turned around. Her heart was racing, and her hands were trembling. In the yard, Bear was glaring at Dave, growling low. Dave frowned, glanced at Bear, and came inside. She continued washing the dishes as if nothing had happened. Mom, I'm going home. Going already? Why don't you rest a little? No, I have things to do at home. Dave left hastily. Watching her sons slumped back, she sat down in the living room. The contents of the phone call echoed in her head. No, my son would never do such a thing. She didn't want to believe it, but the conversation was too clear. Dave was secretly trying to use the house as collateral to borrow money. She went into her room and took the envelope Bear had found from the drawer. She reread her husband's note. Absolutely must not be given to David. George had known. Anticipating that Dave would target the house and land, he had prepared in advance and buried copies of the documents. George, you knew, didn't you? Tears streamed down. Even facing death, her husband worried about her and told her to protect the house and be careful. Bear whined softly at the doorway. She invited Bear in. Come in, Bear. Bear entered the room and sat next to her. She hugged him. You were the one George sent, weren't you? To protect me. Bear didn't answer, but just licked her hand. She made a decision. She could no longer silently endure. She had to find out what Dave was trying to do and protect this house. George, I will protect the house well. I promise. She whispered toward the ceiling. She felt as if her husband was watching over her from somewhere. A few days later, the rainy season began. Heavy rain fell almost every night, and thunder roared. One night, when an especially loud thunderclap sounded, Eleanor, who couldn't sleep, heard the scratch sound again. Bear was scratching something again. She opened the door, and Bear was frantically scratching the floorboards in front of the small room's doorway. Bear, what is it now? She was irritated. She couldn't sleep with this every night. Stop it, you'll ruin the floor. But Bear didn't stop, scratching with his front paws and pressing his nose to the floor. Sniffing as if something was beneath. A chilling feeling washed over her. Could there be something there again? Just like when he found the envelope by the crock? She entered the small room and checked the corner of the floor where Bear was scratching. The rug was slightly peeled back. She carefully pulled it off, revealing the floorboards beneath. Bear continued to scratch that very spot. What is it? She felt the surface of the board with her hand and touched something small and hard. She picked it up, and it was a tiny pen-shaped machine she had never seen before. As she fiddled with it, she found a small button and pressed it. A faint hissing sound. It was a voice recorder. She was startled. Why was a voice recorder under the floor? Oh, George's faint voice was heard. Her heart clenched, followed by the voices of Dave and Tiffany. Dad, hasn't Mom's memory been getting worse lately? It was Dave's voice. She held her breath and listened intently. What is he saying? George's voice sounded angry. What are you talking about? Tiffany's voice followed. Daddy, Mom keeps saying the same things over and over lately. It seems like the early stages of dementia. Don't talk nonsense. My wife is still healthy, George said. But Dave continued. Dad, but we should prepare just in case. Once we get the mental competency certificate. Certificate? What certificate? George's voice rose. Tiffany spoke gently. Yes, Daddy, if we organize the paperwork then. The inheritance will be smooth later. Organize the paperwork? What is that? Dave cut in. If you transfer the title of the house and land to us, we will take care of Mom. It's better for Mom, too. There was silence. George's heavy breathing was heard. Hey, are you two serious? Is that what taking care of your parents means? His voice trembled, filled with anger and disappointment. Dad, don't misunderstand. We don't mean anything bad, Dave defended. But George did not reply. The recording ended there. Eleanor dropped the voice recorder. It hit the floor with a clatter. She collapsed. It can't be. Her voice trembled, and tears flowed. Dave and Tiffany were planning to claim she had dementia and steal the deed. Dave, even you were planning to treat your mother as mentally incompetent and take the house? She cried aloud. Her heart felt torn apart. The son she had given birth to and raised. Bear sat quietly beside her, his eyes sad. Thunder roared again, and lightning flashed. The rain became heavier. She cried for a while and then picked up the voice recorder. She understood why George had left this. It was proof of what Dave and Tiffany were plotting. George, you even prepared this for me. She hugged the voice recorder to her chest. George had known about their plan even before he died. Just as she was about to put the recorder in the room drawer, the front door opened. "Mom." It was Tiffany's voice. She must have come in from the rain. She quickly tried to hide the recorder, but her hands were shaking, and it rolled onto the floor. Tiffany walked toward the small room, turned on the light, and saw Eleanor crouching, trying to pick up the recorder, and noticed the peeled-back rug on the floor. Tiffany's face went pale. "What is that?" Her voice was trembling. Eleanor tightly gripped the recorder and stood up. "I heard it. I heard everything." Her voice was cold and resolute. Tiffany took a step back. Bear growled and bared his fangs. "Alert." "Mom, you heard that?" Tiffany's voice trembled further. Her face was white, and her confusion was evident. "I heard everything you two were planning to do to me. You were planning to claim I have dementia and steal the deed. Weren't you?" Her voice was filled with rage. Tiffany was speechless. "No, Mom, it's a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding? When it's all on the recorder. What misunderstanding is there?" She thrust the voice recorder forward. Tiffany's face grew even paler. That was just a conversation about, what if? We weren't seriously planning to." But Eleanor did not believe her. "Lies. I also heard Dave talking on the phone about borrowing money. You were going to use my house as collateral, weren't you?" Hearing that, Tiffany could no longer say anything. Thunder roared again. Lightning illuminated the room, highlighting Tiffany's pale, frightened, and anxious face. Bear continued to growl, stepping forward when Tiffany tried to approach. "Mom, please calm down. Let us explain." "Explain? What is there to explain besides the fact that you tried to deceive me?" Her voice was raised. She had never been this angry in her life. Tiffany took out her cell phone and seemed to be calling Dave. "Honey, come home immediately. Something terrible has happened." Her voice was urgent. She hung up and looked at Eleanor. "Mom, let's talk when Dave gets back. Please calm down." "Calm down? How can I be calm when my own son has betrayed me?" she cried out. Her heart felt like it was tearing apart. She gripped the recorder, went into her room, and shut the door. Tiffany stood outside, hesitated, and then went to the living room. Inside the room, Eleanor sat on the bed, shaking all over. Sadness and the feeling of betrayal washed over her at once. "George, what should I do? My own son betrayed me like this," she sobbed. Bear stood guard outside the door, not allowing anyone to approach. The rain was still falling hard. Lightning tore through the night sky. Her heart pounded. It felt like her world had collapsed. The son she trusted had betrayed her. "They think I'm stupid," she muttered. She was old, but not stupid. She knew how important this house and land were. It was the property she and her husband had worked hard for their entire lives. She listened to the recorder again. George's voice was heard. "Is that what taking care of your parents means?" Surely her husband also felt betrayed. And how heartbroken he must have been to hear such words from his own children. "George, I understand how you felt. I feel the same way now," she whispered. She heard the door open outside. Dave must have returned. She could hear them talking in low voices. "What should we do, honey?" Mom heard everything. "That voice recorder. Dad left it behind." Dave's voice was panicked. She pulled the blanket over her head. She didn't want to hear any more. She closed her eyes but couldn't sleep. It was the night her world crumbled. Since that night, Eleanor barely left her room for several days. Barely eating, only drinking a little water that Bear brought her. Dave and Tiffany knocked on the door repeatedly, but she didn't answer. She didn't want to see anyone. She didn't listen to the radio or turn on the TV. She just lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, her head filled with betrayal, longing for her husband, and fear for the future. Bear did not leave the doorway of her room, growling whenever anyone approached. On the afternoon of the third day, she got up and looked around the dusty room. Sunlight streamed through the window, and she suddenly remembered her husband's belongings. After he died, she had packed his things in boxes, unable to bear throwing them away, and stored them in the closet's top shelf. She brought a chair and took down the dusty box. When she opened the box, her husband's clothes, watch, glasses, and various other things were still there. A familiar scent drifted out. At the bottom of the box, She found an old, worn journal with a frayed cover. She opened it, and her husband's clumsy handwriting appeared. George hadn't had much education, so his handwriting wasn't neat, but she could read it. She began to read, Fall 2023. David's and Tiffany's words are strange. They keep talking to Ellie about organizing the house. I'm worried. Her heart pounded hard. Her husband had also noticed their strange behavior. This house and land must be protected until the end under Ellie's name. It must not be given to David. He might lose the house because of his debt. Tears welled up. Her husband had known that her son had huge debts and was targeting the house. I'm worried about Ellie. She will be alone if I go first. I don't know how David and Tiffany will treat her. If anything happens to me, Bear will remember. This dog saw and heard everything. I hid the voice recorder under the floor and buried the deed copy under the Crocks. Maybe I can only trust this dog now. Bear is smart, better than a human. Ellie, listen to Bear. He will protect you. She choked up, holding the journal to her chest, sobbing. George, why did you prepare all this without telling me a word? Her husband had prepared everything before his passing to protect her. Did you even send this dog to protect me? She wiped her tears and called Bear into the room. She smiled through her tears. You were the one George sent, weren't you? To protect me. Bear approached and sat quietly. She hugged Bear. I'm sorry, Bear. Mom was exhausted and couldn't take care of you. Bear, let's be strong together. If George entrusted you with this, I will trust you too. Bear looked up at her, his eyes filled with determination. For the first time, she truly felt Bear was family. Not just a dog who saved her life, but a kin sent by her husband. She stroked Bear. She wiped her tears and stood up. She couldn't stay locked up in the room anymore. She had to face them. She put the voice recorder, the envelope, and the journal, the three undeniable pieces of evidence, in a hidden spot where she could retrieve them quickly when needed. The real battle was about to begin. She was determined to protect this house until the end. She looked in the mirror, combed her messy hair, washed her face, and changed her clothes. I must be strong. I can't just cry. She was old, but her mind was still sound. She could fight. She opened the door and stepped out. No one was in the living room. She went to the kitchen and cooked rice, her first proper meal in days. She also fed Bear. In the evening, Dave and Tiffany returned and were surprised to see her out of the room. Mom, are you okay? Dave asked cautiously. Yes, I'm fine. Her voice was cold. Dave, Tiffany, that's enough. I heard everything. I know what you were trying to do, and I won't be deceived. The two froze. This house and land are mine. I will protect them under my name until the end. Her voice was strong. Mom, that's a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding. It's all on the recorder. I also read what George left behind. Hearing that, Dave's face paled, and Tiffany turned white. Bear stood beside her, glaring at the two and growling. Do you know how worried your father was about you? He made thorough preparations before he died to protect me. So, no matter what you try to do, I won't lose. Understood? Tears fell again, but her voice didn't tremble. Dave whimpered, Mom, I'm sorry. But she did not forgive him. Sorry? Do you know what you've done? She cried out. Tiffany pulled Dave's arm. Honey, let's go. They left. Watching their backs, she felt sad but also proud. She looked at Bear. Bear, we won. Bear wagged his tail. She smiled and stroked Bear. It's all thanks to George. We won because he prepared everything. She whispered toward the sky. That night, she had a peaceful sleep for the first time in days. Bear was standing guard at the doorway. She knew there might be more difficulties ahead, but she was no longer afraid. Because Bear was there. Because George's love was there. A few days later, Dave came home alone. Tiffany wasn't with him. His face was exhausted and troubled. Mom, I'm sorry. I was truly wrong. He bowed his head. I know, she said. She was no longer angry. After a moment, he said tentatively, Mom, I have one favor to ask. Can you come to the county clerk's office with me? The clerk's office? What for? Just to reconfirm the house documents. There are many scams these days. So just to be sure. His words sounded plausible, but she was still uneasy. Just to confirm that it is still in your name. Nothing else. He smiled, but his smile was very strained. She thought about it and agreed. Okay, let's go. She decided to go to find out the truth. Dave sighed in relief. Thank you, Mom. I'll pick you up at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. That night, she couldn't sleep. What would happen tomorrow? She tossed and turned. She put the voice recorder, the envelope, and the journal into a small bag and hid it under the bed. In her dream, George appeared again and urged her. Ellie, be careful. Don't forget to take Bear with you. The next morning, she got ready. Bear, let's go together today. I'm nervous going alone. Bear seemed to agree and wagged his tail. At 10 o'clock, Dave arrived by car. Tiffany was with him. Mom, why did you bring the dog? Tiffany frowned. Bear is coming too. It's a pity to leave him alone at home, she said firmly. The car silently headed to the clerk's office. When they arrived, she was nervous. Hello, Mom, Dave said. Inside, a civil servant greeted Dave like an acquaintance. Welcome. Yes, you're the one who called. She felt that something was wrong. Did you make an appointment? The clerk pulled out a stack of documents. I have prepared the documents here. Please, Mom, sit down, Dave urged. As she sat down, Bear stood next to her. The clerk began to explain. You are Mrs. Eleanor Johnson, correct? These are the documents for the house and land in your name. If you sign here, we can proceed with the transfer immediately. She was shocked. Transfer? What transfer are you talking about? Dave quickly cut in. Mom, it's just a formality, to make the inheritance easier later. Inheritance? I'm not dead yet. What inheritance? Her voice rose. Tiffany spoke gently. Mom, everyone organizes things in advance these days. The taxes will be cheaper later. I will not do it. Why do I have to transfer my house in advance? She said resolutely. Dave's and Tiffany's faces stiffened. The clerk was perplexed. Ma'am, however, an appointment has already been made. I didn't make any appointment. My son did it without permission. Her voice trembled, but she was resolute. Suddenly, Bear barked loudly. Woof, woof. He barked as if the documents were dangerous. Mom, make that dog shut up, Tiffany shouted, but Bear did not stop. Dave handed her a pen. Mom, just sign here, hurry. His voice sounded rushed. She didn't take the pen. I will not sign. She stood up, taking her bag. Mom, where are you going? Dave grabbed her arm. She shook off his arm. Let go, I'm going home. Mom, please, just help me this one time. Dave pleaded, but she shook her head. Bear growled, baring his fangs at him. She took the voice recorder from her bag and handed it to the clerk. Listen to this. Listen to what my son was saying. She pressed play on the recorder. Dave's and Tiffany's voices echoed in the office. Once we get the mental competency certificate, if you transfer the title of the house and land to us. The clerk's face stiffened. People around them began to murmur. Dave's face turned pure white, and Tiffany ground her teeth. You tried to deceive me. You were going to claim I have dementia and steal the house. Weren't you? Her voice trembled but was strong. This house is where I live, in my name, and I will organize it with my own hands on the day I choose. Don't think you can take it away by treating me as mentally ill. The clerk was confused and put away the documents. Ma'am, if the principal does not consent, the procedure cannot proceed. She nodded and left the office with Bear. Dave and Tiffany were left standing, stunned. Stepping outside, the sunlight was blinding. She took a deep breath. We won, she whispered. Bear stood beside her, wagging his tail. She decided to walk home. She was tired, but she wanted to walk with Bear. We won, Bear. It's all thanks to George. Bear whined softly. She looked up at the blue sky. George, thanks to your preparation, I protected the house. Thank you. After that, Dave and Tiffany stopped visiting the house. She and Bear lived peaceful days. About a month later, a neighbor told her they saw Dave working at a construction site. He was said to be working very hard. Tiffany was reportedly in a legal battle over credit card debt. Hearing the news, her heart ached. Her son was wrong, but he was still her son. Was he pushed to the brink? But it was the right decision to protect the house. They would have lost everything if you had given it to them. The neighbor said. She nodded. She wondered if she had been too harsh. But she knew she wasn't wrong. Dave was. Autumn came, and the apple tree bore fruit. One rainy afternoon, Dave returned. He was wearing work clothes stained with mud and paint. His face was tanned, and his hands were rough. He stood outside, completely soaked. Mom. Her heart ached. She opened the door and let him inside. Bear growled, but it wasn't the same hostility as before. Mom, I'm sorry. Dave's voice was trembling. I just wanted to take the easy way out for once. Because of the debt, Tiffany was suffering too, so I tried to take your house. He knelt on the floor. Mom, I was wrong. I've thought a lot while working on the site lately. Where did I go wrong? How did I end up like this? Tears flowed. It's all my fault. I didn't work hard. I couldn't manage my debt. And in the end, I targeted you. Mom, please forgive me. I truly regret it. She was silent for a while. Should she forgive him, or should she be harsher? Bear approached Dave, sniffed him, and gently licked his hand. Bear might have forgiven him. Stand up, she said. Stand up and sit down. She looked at her son's calloused hands. I wasn't entirely blameless either. I saw you were in trouble and turned a blind eye, thinking you would manage on your own. But I couldn't give up this house. This is the very life of me and your father. I know, Mom. I understand now. Then let's start over. But there are conditions. First, you must resolve your debt yourself. Second, never try to deceive me or touch my documents again. Third, come back sometimes and feed Bear. Yes, Mom, I promise. Dave cried. She prepared a meal for him. He must have been very hungry. Eating ravenously, watching her son, she was moved to tears. Bear sat beside him, watching quietly. When he finished eating, Dave said, Mom, I'm going to live an honest life. I'll work on the site, save money, and pay off my debt first. Yes, take your time. No need to rush. What about Tiffany? We decided to get a divorce. We were just making each other miserable being together. Her son looked like he had grown up a lot. Is that so? If that's your decision, Mom respects it. Dave left. Before leaving, he bowed low to her. Mom, take care. I'll be back often. Watching her son's back, which was still slumped but had a solid stride, she felt her heart lighten. Bear came to her side. Bear, my son is going to start over. Bear wagged his tail. She looked up at the sky. The rain had stopped, and the moon was emerging from the clouds. George, your son has seen the light. I'm sure he'll be all right. Several months later, Dave kept his promise. He visited every week. His face was tanned, but his eyes were brighter. He worked hard and gradually paid off his debt. He also fed Bear regularly, and the two became friends. Tiffany had divorced and moved to New York to look for a new job. She heard. One autumn afternoon, she and Dave and Bear were walking the mountain trail where she had encountered the wild boar. The autumn sun was warm, and the leaves were beginning to change color. Mom, is this where he saved you? Yes, it is. This is where Bear held off the boar. They rested in the shade. She spoke to Bear. If you hadn't been here, this house, and this sun, all would have been lost. You saved me from the boar, and you found what George had hidden. He sent you to protect me in this house, didn't he? She hugged Bear. Dave also stroked Bear. Bear, I want to thank you too. Thank you for protecting Mom. Thank you for opening my eyes. Bear wagged his tail as if in forgiveness. They walked home in the fiery sunset. Dave cooked dinner in the kitchen. She and Bear sat in the yard. We are happy, aren't we? She asked. Yes, Mom, I'm happy. Because you're here. Dave is back, and we have this house. The three shared a simple but warm dinner. Dave said he would pay off his debt by next spring and open a small hardware store. He would start over honestly from scratch this time. She believed in her son. Night fell, and the sky was full of stars. George, are you watching? We're doing well. We protected the house, and Dave has seen the light. It's all thanks to you. And thanks to Bear. The stars seemed to twinkle as if answering. The difficult days were over. She had triumphed thanks to Bear. Thanks to her late husband's love, and thanks to her own strength, life continues, with her and Bear's peaceful life, Dave's new beginning, and her husband watching from heaven. The house was protected, peace had returned,